Hey guys, today I'm going to take you through the process of generating a skull using ZBrush. In my opinion, one of the best ways to really get good at the software and to truly understand the software and the processes it takes to create any type of model. One of the reasons that this one really is great to start off with is due to the fact that there is a grid in here by Scott Spencer. And it's a human skull grid already set up for the whole process, ready to go. So what we're going to do is in our projects here, we're going to start off with a Dynamesh 64 ZPR. The 64 refers to the resolution of Dynamesh, and the resolution itself, of course, is specifying how many points and vertex we get across our piece of geometry. It is also scale sensitive, so be aware of that. If you scale it up really large, then in turn you will also have to raise the resolution pretty significantly. So once you have your sphere 64 Dynamesh here, you're going to go into the light box, and once again in the grids folder you're going to find Scott Spencer's human skull. And now that it's loaded, it's good, it's there, we can see it, but we can't see through our object to truly utilize it for purposes of sculpting. So what we're going to do is come up to our Draw tab up here in the top, and in the Draw tab we're going to change this Fill mode to 3. Now that Fill mode is at 3, you can see we can see through our object and you actually use the references, reference sheets that we have. Now, one other thing you really need to be aware of, I guess, is we're in perspective mode right now, as you can tell. And within ZBrush right here is your dynamic perspective. If we turn this off, we're going to go into 2.5D mode. Now we can actually line our sculpt up to the reference. Our skull sculpt will match up nicely. So if you look here too, even moving it back and forth on the screen, it doesn't deform or change in perspective. So this is 2.5D mode. We'll be popping back between perspective and non-perspective in order to actually, look at our model as we're developing it further. Next thing I usually do for myself here is in our brush palette, we're going to set up some hotkeys. These hotkeys will allow us so we don't have to come into this huge library of different brushes, and we'll use the brushes that we want with the hotkeys that we're going to set up ourselves. So with the Move tool, Move brush here, it's probably the most common brush really in the entire program. To set the hotkey, you're going to hit Control-Alt, click on it, and up in the top it's going to say press any key combination to assign a custom hotkey, or press Escape or mouse button to cancel. You can also press Delete to remove any previous custom hotkeys that you've already assigned. So for our Alt 1, I have the Move brush set up. Alt 2, I have the Clay Buildup. And Alt 3, I have the Dam Standard brush. These are three of the most common brushes that I personally like to use, and I highly recommend that you guys experiment with as many brushes as you can. These are the three typical brushes I use to start off any type of sculpting. Now we're all set and ready to begin. Again, you can see through our geometry. One other thing I want to specify here is under the Draw, you also have the enhance factors and opacity factors, so you can adjust how much opacity is affecting the object in relationship to being able to see your image behind as well. So you can play with these values and find a view that you like. Alright, so let's get started. First things first, I like to use the Move tool. We're going to blow up the draw size by hitting S. That's your hotkey to adjust the draw size. It's also up here, but it just takes time to move your mouse up, move your mouse down. I'm also using a Wacom tablet, by the way. It's against the rules to use ZBrush with a mouse, in my opinion. No pressure sensitivity results in some pretty bad sculpts. So first things, we're going to move in the side. And notice too, when I did that, I had a very large brush. I want to make sure I'm moving the entirety of the shape. If your brush is too small and you do this and you start nudging this in and trying to get it shaped out right, you're going to end up with a pretty crude looking piece of geometry that doesn't exactly shape out the way that we want. So I'm going to turn off the polyframe for a moment so we don't need to see the wire, and allows us to see the image a little bit more clearly. And just real quick too, I'll also specify hotkeys as far as navigation for you guys. So real quick, clicking outside of the geometry will allow you to rotate. While rotating, if you toggle shift, it'll also lock the view. So if I want to look underneath, or if I want to go to the top, sorry about that, hitting shift too many times. So the shift key locks it in. Secondly, panning is holding down alt and then clicking. And then to zoom, you do a pan, so hold down alt, click, but without releasing your click, you're going to release the alt key, and now we're in zoom mode. So those are your three modes of navigation. ZBrush also recognizes the last area that you toggled on, or that you tapped on. So if I come in, for instance, and just move this area, you'll see when I rotate, it keeps that area generally like right in the center. Center's based on where you clicked last. Alright, so again, to get started here, we're going to back out and make the brush size really large, and I'm going to bring these outside edges of the skull in. And really what we're doing here is, it's pretty awesome, but we're just trying to match our shape the best we can in the front view. And we go to the side view and do the same thing, large brush, pull the top of the cranium back a little bit, and we'll just adjust the positionings of the geometry. Squish the face in a little bit and adjust your brush size as necessary as you go through this. Now you notice down here underneath or behind the mandible, there's this vacant area, this area that we want to just eliminate. A quick way to eliminate that area is we'll go to our clay buildup. Once again, I'm using my hotkey, Alt 2. And for this I'm going to hold down Alt. And ZBrush, Alt key generally in many brushes does the opposite. So you see here pulling geometry out, and if I hit Alt, I'm pushing geometry in. So Alt and then back in to make your shapes. So from the side view, without perspective being on, we can hold down Alt and literally just push this area up and in. And then we'll run Dynamesh, okay? Now Dynamesh, what that does is it averages out the spacing of our vertex, and for this I'll show you guys the actual wireframe. It looks pretty gross right now, but we're going to run the hotkey for our Dynamesh 64 by holding down Control. It's also for our mask, so you can see you can mask out areas, and when you paint, whatever's masked isn't going to get affected. Now if you don't have a mask, you can create one outside of the geometry, and that's essentially your hotkey to run Dynamesh. So when you do that, it's going to average out the vertices and the stretching of those vertices and make it much nicer. Alright, so to clean this up even further, we're going to smooth it out. The smooth hotkey is Shift, and you'll notice that whenever you smooth by default, it's at 100% intensity. When you do this, a lot of the time it just does too much, and to control that value, what you're going to do is basically hold down Shift, and then you can scrub the intensity back and forth. I usually use somewhere around 30 for my smoothing, but once again it just depends on how much smoothing you need to do, but do make note of that. Again, hold down Shift and adjust the intensity, and you can see now instead of it being 100 every time I press Shift down, it goes to 30. You don't want all your details to get wiped away every time you go to smooth something. So now we have that. We'll come back in with our move brush, and I'm just going to adjust the draw size, bring this back a little bit, and just start shaping it even further. Alright, pull this out a little bit, follow that arc. Looks pretty good on the back there. This section here will pull down, kind of hangs off the outer edge there. And again, we can smooth things back as well, rather than just moving everything. And pull the chin a little bit. Alright, so we're getting our shape going. I'm going to pull the mandible a little bit more, and just it's a lot of clicking, a lot of just working it out and moving things around. Again, you're jumping from the front view, side view constantly to make your adjustments based on the references. When you do a character or really anything, you're going to want to have nice references, schematics that you can bring in, and of course instead of a skull there, it would be the set object that you are trying to create yourself. Now the next step I usually do is again with our clay build-up brush. I'm going to come in and hold down Alt, which again does the opposite. We don't want to pull these out, it'll look kind of weird, but what we want to do is actually push it in. So okay, we're going to hold down Alt and sink in the eye cavity area. Just trace it out and then come back and smooth it a little bit. All right, we'll do the same thing for the nose. So we'll just kind of sink that in, run Dynamesh, and then we'll use our move brush to make some finer tune adjustments to the shape and just get it matched up even better to our reference. Alright, so pull the nose up a little bit. There we go. Run some Dynamesh on it. And there we have it. So from the side view now, that we have our eye cavities and our nose cavity, we're going to use our move brush from the side. Now again, it's from the side view, then to the back, and sorry, from side to front, you know, you're just constantly shifting back and forth. All right, we'll smooth that out a little bit. All right, and again, we're running Dynamesh constantly on this thing as we adjust the shape. And just get that just right. And again, we can go to our front view, or sorry, our top view, and adjust the positioning of the nose from there as well. There's my shift key again, sorry about that. And use all the views to get the right shaping. Alright, there we go. So got a couple other elements added in there. I'm going to turn off floor for a second. I'm going to hit F to frame the object, and we can also turn off the wireframe display just to see the shape that we have so far. Not bad. Coming along pretty good. So next thing I'll do here is turning back on floor. Now we're going to jump into the dam standard brush, and what I utilize that for is marking out key areas of the sculpt I'm trying to create. So for instance, you see the cheekbone here. And just kind of draw a line here running back through the cheekbone just to give me a better idea of where that sets. And this will also allow us to hide the view of our skull, which by the way, I've done it a few times, but if you click on floor, you'll see it toggles on and off the visibility of your reference. Alright, and then the mandible runs down here, kind of give an idea where the teeth are going to set, and now we can toggle off floor so get a better idea of where things are. Alright, so from here, side view, clay buildup, I'm going to hold down Alt, and we're going to cave in that area. And again, I'm just using the reference we just dropped in from our clay buildup, or sorry, our dam standard brush. And you can see I'm just doing it a little too much. And we could also, of course, adjust the intensity, bring it down a little bit more so it's not so drastic. It's also pen pressure sensitive, so you know, depending on how heavy-handed you are. Pull this out just a little bit more. There we go. So now we get a little bit more separation. Pull that cheekbone out just a little bit from the side view here. And this will of course get caved in. Sorry. There we go. Pull this out a little bit just to maintain that shaping. There we go. Run some Dynamesh, and now we're getting our shape even further. Alright, other things I want to handle here. You can see now that we got the mandible kind of separated from the cheekbone, and so it's much more obvious that we need to push a lot of this geometry in. So I'm going to go to our move, adjust the draw size, and bring a lot of this spacing down. Kind of adjust it a little bit further. Bringing these areas in, adjust the shape a little bit more, and there we go. Much better. I'm going to smooth that out, smooth the bridge of the nose out a little bit. There goes my shift key again. Sorry. I could go and turn that off, but I'm already recording, so I don't want to disrupt the recording. Alright, so there's our skull. Started off, you know, pretty decent start, and of course we can continue going in and adding a bunch more details as as you go. But I'm going to shave this down a little bit, just to give it a little nicer angle. Alright, and yeah, so we got a pretty good start. Now we can do the same for all these type of details. I usually rinse and repeat sort of thing, so we'll go in dam standard, out this area. Okay, and that's part of the upper orbital running back through the cheek all the way back to the ear canal. So we're going to grab our clay buildup, and I'm just going to push this area in a little bit. Again, pressure sensitivity. My mouse is, or my Wacom's freaking out on me a little bit. There we go. Alright, so at a certain point you're going to find like, okay, I put all this detail in, but when I run Dynamesh, I lose the detail. So for instance, you put that in, run Dynamesh, you can see some of those details stay around, but a lot of them get hidden. And that's again just due to the resolution settings that we have for our Dynamesh. So let's take a look next at the resolution settings. Those will be located under Geometry. We're going to go to Dynamesh, and right here you'll see Dynamesh is turned on. This giant button right here. And 64 is our resolution. If we take that and double it, let's say 128, and then we run Dynamesh again, and I'll turn on wireframe so you can see the adjustment. We get a lot more. We just doubled the amount of points that we have on our geometry. So it just allows you to go in and make even more fine-tuned adjustments. Smoothing isn't going to be as drastic any longer, so you may need to adjust your settings on the smooth. And I usually go around and just kind of touch up some of the areas that look a little tessellated. You can also come down to the deformation section down here, and within deformation you can grab polish and just kind of scrub that up a little bit, and it'll polish the entire geometry, make it a little smoother. Just depends on what you're trying to do. Alright, so let's talk about next. I could sculpt on this all day, obviously, and make it awesome, but we want to jump into the next step, and that's basically separating the mandible from the skull. Right? So to separate the mandible from the skull, we got to discuss what are called polygroups. Polygroups are found over here as well, if you go into polygroups, and you can see there's multiple ways to create a polygroup. You can do autogroups. One really nice feature is autogroups with UVs. So if you bring in an object that has a UV layout, you click on this and it separates all of the geometry into polygroups based on the UV shells, which is really nice. You can also just group visible. And to see the group is really just turning on the polyframer, which you've seen me do a few times. Now if I just group visible, since our entire object's visible currently, you'll see it changes color. The color represents the polygroups. And another very common way, and the way I'm going to be using in this video, is masking. You can group by mask. So if you mask something out, you can group masked here, and the hotkey for that is Control W. So you don't have to come into this this area every single time you do this. But if I just click on it for now, you'll see it's just changing the groups based on the masking, and now we have two different groups. So the idea of this process is to, of course, mask out the mandible. Once we mask out the mandible, we'll set a group or a polygroup out of it, and once we have a polygroup, we can then go to Subtool, and we'll do what's called a split group split. This guy right here, that's under your Subtool setting. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to hold down Control. You can see we could freehand mask this out. However, I'm going to do it much faster with a lasso. So we'll use the mask lasso. So what I'm doing is I'm holding down Control for the mask pen. We're going to the mask pen, and I'm instead selecting mask lasso. So now I can actually just hold down Control and create a mask to separate out the mandible. And that's pretty crude, so let's go ahead and turn on our floor so we can actually follow the reference sketch here. So to create our mask, I'm going to hold down Control right in between the teeth here. Okay, take your time here and try and get a nice shape. Get the upper portion of the mandible, and then get that whole thing. There we go. So again, once it's selected, once it's masked out, we're going to hit Control W, and I'm turning off the floor just so you can see how this works. Control W, and now we have two separate groups. And you see I missed a little spot there with my masking. So let me just make sure that that area is actually contained in that selection. There we go. So again, Control W, there's our two different groups, or polygroups. And again, we're going to come over here to Group Split. When we click on this, it's not an undoable operation, so we're just going to, I mean, this is what we want to do, but just take note of that. Sometimes you do want to make sure you save before doing this, because if not, there's always a way to bring it back, of course, but just to save some time is probably a good idea to make a save. So we're going to hit OK. That separates the jawbone from the cranium. You can see here. Okay, so let's fix up the holes. Now we got a giant hole below and a giant hole in our mandible as well. So to fix the holes, we're going to go to that layer and just run Dynamesh on it. So just hold down Control, run Dynamesh, and there we go. Closes out the hole, and of course we'll go in and smooth that out and clean it up a bit more. And then here's the mandible. Let me just isolate that so you can see how this works as well. And we'll run Dynamesh so it closes it out. Alright, so there's a lot of crude geometry in here. This I'm not too worried about because we'll just smooth it out and run Dynamesh, smooth it out, run Dynamesh over and over. But these guys over here, you can see it's not a lot of shape there. And if we go to Sculpt on it, it's going to pull both sides because the shape is so flat. So a good trick here is we're going to go to our Inflate brush. To get there, we're going to hit B, I for Inflate, and then down here you'll see wherever N is. Where's N? N. There we go. There's our Inflate brush. Alright, so BIN is your quick hotkey command to get that particular brush. Alright, so we'll inflate it up, run Dynamesh, and then smooth it down. Okay, and the way inflate works kind of like pumps air into it, if you will. And like I said, this area I'm just going to smooth out, run Dynamesh, smooth out, run Dynamesh, and it's pretty much good to go. And now it's all about just making our shape. So we turn our floor back on, go to our move brush, and pull those areas down, this area up. And by the way, with our Dynamesh, I failed to mention this in the very beginning, but with our shape and with our sculpt so far, you probably realize that we do have symmetry on. The hotkey for symmetry is simply X on your keyboard. And you can also find the symmetry features under the transform up here on the top. Here's all your symmetry features. And we're going to go to our move brush now, and I'm just going to bring this whole area down on the screen there. So mandible is separated all the way through. Alright, so decent selection there, and actually underneath as well you can see a little bit better, of course, what I'm trying to do here. And smooth it out. And again, if the smooth is going too slow for you, you can always adjust that setting like we did earlier, just holding down Shift and adjusting the intensity of it. And then we'll run Dynamesh. Check our views, and you can see it's lifted up now all through this section. And let me just go through and adjust that. So I'm going to pull all this down, push all that over, and you see we're messing up a bit of the outside. So one other little trick I'll show you here: simply mask out the area that you like, so that whenever you move, you don't affect that particular area. I'm just following the guides, get it in there, clear my mask, run Dynamesh again as usual. Just do that quite often. So there we go. Now we're getting our shape much better. Just a little bit of refinement, fine tuning, and we'll have a mandible separated from our cranium. And this works for any type of separation. It's not just for the skull. And again, I just feel like the skull is a great way to get good using the software, due to the fact that you do not need to adjust anything. You don't have to think about what you're going to do. A lot of my students spend way too much time figuring out what they want to do versus just getting in there and using the software and learning the software. It's like, what do I want to do? What should I pick? I need to draw something. It's like, no, just open it up, practice. When you're done, I scare a lot of students. I'm like, alright, shut it down, open it up, do it again. It's like, why did I do it wrong? No, the repetition is going to just help ensure that you really learn the processes that you're going through. 10,000 hours rule, basically. Alright, so there's our mandible separated. Let me go ahead and show you guys the cranium as well. And that way you can kind of see them both together. We got some spacing still to fix for our teeth. One quick way to switch between subtools as well is just holding down your Alt key. If I hold down Alt and click on the cranium, now I'm working on the cranium. If I hold down Alt and click on the jawbone, you can see I'm bouncing back and forth from the two selections. So I'm going to smooth this area out, obviously. Get underneath there, smooth it out, run some Dynamesh, and then let's take a look at our floor once again. And you see the mandible still needs some shaping, and obviously the upper portion of the teeth region here. Alright, so there we go. And again, we got some spacing to deal with inside there, so let's go ahead back to our clay buildup, and I'll just push that area in, and we'll hide the mandible for this. It's getting in the way. There we go. Create that cavity a little bit better, a little easier to recognize. And again, run Dynamesh, smooth it out, continue. Run Dynamesh, smooth it out, continue. It's just a lot of the same practices now. Okay. There you have it. Alright, so let's take a look at the entirety of the shape. I'm going to hit F to frame out the object, and we'll turn off floor so we can actually see what we're doing. And there's our skull thus far. Alright, so one more thing I want to go through before I move on to the next video is a couple things really. Teeth and H polish brush. Here's the H polish brush real quick. The hotkey for that one's BH. So just BH, and you have your H polish brush, so you don't have to go in there and dig and look around. And based on the camera angle, it's going to allow you to flatten out particular areas and regions. And since this is bone, you know, it shouldn't be so rounded out and so just too many round edges and things like that going all throughout the geometry. So if we go underneath, it can flatten out the cheekbone a little bit from the underneath side, and then from other angles, obviously, hit these regions, and it gives you more of that hard surface edge and look to your design. You can also come in for for the temple and go in there, and I usually cave that in just a little bit like so. And there we go. So that's that aspect. Again, play around with the H polish brush. Very, very helpful for flattening out areas and adjusting areas, making them nice. Alright, so for the teeth, what we're going to do for the teeth, there's several ways of doing this obviously, but one of the ways I prefer or personally really like, now that we've talked about polygroups and things like that, is literally just going into a particular brush. And that brush we're going to use is called the Insert Sphere. Now you can do a cube and things like that, but I found teeth to be a little easier to handle with just insert spheres and things of that nature. So if we take a look, here's our polygroups. I'm going to hit Control W so it's all one polygroup. That way whenever we draw in a new tooth, you see it has its own very own color. So you draw it in. From here it masks out the cranium, so we can do any kind of editing and things like that on our teeth here. You could also run Dynamesh to combine them directly to the cranium, but for right now we're actually, due to the fact we have two separate polygroups here, we'll do a group split, and that'll keep our teeth separated. So we can actually go to our teeth, to the layer for our teeth. And now we have symmetry on, and when we run Dynamesh, it's going to try and combine the teeth that are close together. So we don't want them to actually get combined together. So what we're going to do here is just quickly mask out one of the teeth, right down the center there. And of course, we turn off our symmetry by hitting X, hold down Control, and I'll get that section selected. Control W to make our polygroup once again, and we're going to click here on Group Split. Alright, so now our teeth are separated. We can work on one at a time, and whenever we run Dynamesh, it's not going to try and combine those teeth together. And then from there, it's all about shaping out the teeth, smoothing them out, getting them to the right position. Pretty straightforward as far as the sculpting and the details of it. can also, of course, run Dynamesh, and you see it's a smaller object, so we may want to take our resolution. Actually, really do. Let's do, I don't know, 256 with this one. Run Dynamesh on it, and sometimes you do need to click on the geometry for Dynamesh to update, so there we go. And that should be enough points to at least get the initial shape going. And you can see our skull and cranium still need some shaping as well, as far as where the teeth line and where the teeth should connect in. So I can jump to that real quick. Take our move brush. I'll clear the mask, and we can drop that down a little bit just to match that up a little bit better. Makes it a lot easier to place the teeth, and you can see that little alt clicking between the geometry makes your life a lot easier. Again, Control W sets polygroups. Control W, see that? So there we go. And we'll just continue shaping out the tooth with the move brush. And of course, we'll come back as well with the H polish brush, or there's several brushes that work very similar to the H polish brush. But I'll just show you on with that one. There's Trim Dynamic and Trim Adaptive, and a couple other brushes that flatten out shapes and are really good for hard surface sculpting. Alright, so there's a tooth. And then with it, again, H polish brush, I'll turn off the frame, the floor, we don't really need to see that. And then go in and just kind of polish it from the front view. You see it like flattens it out. And do it from the side view, the other side, and of course the back, and underneath. And for the underneath side, of course, you may want to hide your mandible. Get it out of the way there for a second. Oop, there goes my shift again. Apologize. Alright, so you can see we can just shape it out, smooth it out, continue editing it. And there's a tooth. Sound good? Alright, so next up, let's talk about just mirroring geometry from one side to the other and all that kind of fun stuff. So I'm going to just actually turn on everything so you can see. And we'll remove the other tooth. So once you do a whole row, you don't want to have to go in and sculpt the entirety of the other row. You want to be able to basically use the same tooth over and over again to create the others. So just to show you guys how to do that, we're going to actually select our tooth. We can hit duplicate, W for our move, and you just draw a widget over the top of the tooth itself, and from the center circle where it highlights in white, you can move it over. We'll turn on our floor again, and now that we have it moved, we can smooth it out to shrink it down a little bit and adjust the shape and adjust the angle, and yeah, get it placed just like we did for the first one. Alright, and front view, make sure you check your side view as well. And some of these, they overlap so much you'll have to estimate the shape and where they belong, but just smile while you're doing this and have a mirror handy and just as good. Alright, so you can see we can adjust the shape, adjust the position. And again, the widget, let's just talk about that real quick. It's pretty critical. We'll hit W, and then you draw over the shape. If you hold down Shift, it'll align it just like it does when you're in Photoshop, for instance, trying to draw a perfectly straight line. R is your rotate, so you can rotate the object. And E is your scale, so you can scale it up and down. And of course, we have like several teeth here. You can use the same one using your move, rotate, and scale. W, E, and R once again to toggle between them makes your life a lot easier, a lot less clicks. Alright, so the teeth here, they're two separated teeth, so what we're going to do first is we're going to go down to Merge under Subtool, and we're going to say Merge Down. Now if things aren't stacked exact, something like this, and you click Merge Down, it's going to merge the tooth to the cranium, to the next tooth, downward. So the trick to adjusting the layering order here is holding down Control and using your arrows on your keyboard to adjust the order. Once you have the correct order, you can come in and just simply click on Merge Down. We'll hit OK, and now the two teeth that we have thus far are connected. Now, easiest, best way to do our mirroring, one of the final things I'll show you in this particular video. To do the mirroring, we're going to go into our Z plugin, and we're going to come down here to Subtool Master, and within Subtool Master you're going to find where it says Mirror right here. Click on Mirror and you get a little option box. It's going to say Append as a new subtool, or you can choose to merge it into one subtool. For this I'll do that. And the axis. On this we're going to use the X-axis so that it mirrors it from the right side over to the left side. We hit OK, creates our teeth, maintains the subdivision levels, and again we can go through and create the entirety of the row going all the way back to the molars and wisdom teeth, and once you're completed with one side you can simply mirror them over to the other. Alright, so that's it. That's our skull, and again once you get through this process, what I highly recommend is well, you could save it, give it a save, skull 01, and I'll just save that to the desktop for the time being. Now we have it saved. Well, next step is we'll hit T. T toggles on and off edit. Then Control N is for new. We're going to go to Lightbox, and under Project we're going to click on our Dynamesh 64. I'm going to hit No. We already saved the changes, and within this file we'll go back up to Lightbox, Grids, Human Skull, Draw, Fill Mode 3 like we did in the beginning, and turn off perspective and sculpt it again. And then when you're done with that, do it again. And when you're done with that, do it again. Again, the repetition is key here. Practice is key, and this is one of the fastest ways and really good reference. The alignment on the reference is really nice, so it just gives you a really good way to practice with the software and really get a good firm grip on how to utilize it, how to navigate, and what the different tools are. Alright, so I hope this video was informative and helps you guys out in completing your skull assignments, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.